Welcome back, Duke fans. Another edition of Talking Ball. It's Jack with JD, and looking ahead to the game with Miami this Tuesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Duke will look to have a better defensive performance in this one against Miami, followed up by one of the all-time Duke performances of Cooper Flagg. 42 points, just phenomenal against Notre Dame. In the first half, he did it with the three. In the second half, he did it by drawing fouls and getting to the free throw line and scoring in the paint. And so the rest of the Duke team, outside of Kama Malawach as well, who's also awesome in the game against Notre Dame, will be looking to play better, and the Duke defense will be looking to play better against Miami. And with that being said, JD, what are you looking forward to in this game with Miami?
First, I just want to say that in the various interviews of Cooper Flagg, when they got to ask him what was he going to do after the game, having set this record, everything, he said, I don't know, I'll probably hang out with the guys and watch some other games. There's some pretty good games on. So, it tells you a lot about Coop. What am I looking for? Okay. So I will, when you ask me that question, I sort of always jump to the keys for Duke, as opposed to what am I looking for? They're kind of the same question. So I'm looking for Caleb Foster and Isaiah Evans to have one of them to have a breakout game. It's long overdue. It's a great opportunity. And they should be able to see minutes they should be able to see minutes here. The second thing is, since we'll never know until game time whether Malik Brown is playing, Jon Scheyer did not sound overly optimistic during the post-game press conference. That means Patrick Gamba is going to be in the game as the backup to Kamal Malawich. And so I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing extended minutes and the development of Patrick. I mean, it's just great that that's the switch that we get to go to. And the third one for me is I'm going to stay, and we'll get back to this much later, with this challenge to the team of running the table. So I really clearly see this as an opportunity to get one more win. And when you want to run the table in the ACC, you can only do it one game at a time. So where are we? 6-0 now?
I believe 5-0, but I could be wrong. I'll double check. You keep talking.
I think this made 6.
Okay.
In which case, just
You're right.
want to get this
6-0. You're right. 14-2, 6-0 in conference.
just want to get to the 7th in a row, and that's the only way that you could run the table. But I'll have more on this later.
All right, fair enough. It's funny you mentioned Cooper and his post game notes, because I made a note of that as well. How the guy scored 42 points. Was he say, "Yeah, I just want to watch basketball with my teammates. There's some good games on today." So that was one thing I noted from one of his interviews. The other thing that I think was notable was they asked him, your 3-point shooting, it's been much better as of late. What's been the difference for you? And he at first kind of gave like a non-answer of, I've always, been, confident in my shot, just wasn't going in basically. But then he did allude to something which I don't think was, and he didn't even indicate this was like a magic potion or anything, but he did say, over the holiday break, he got to shoot with his dad at his gym, and that gave him, it just made him more, comfortable and confident, and it just gave him some good energy, right? So I went back and looked in those 4 games since the holiday break, which I I am assuming was the break from December 21st until December 31st. So we've had 4 games since then. Cooper Flagg is shooting 9 of 14, which is 65% from 3, and he's averaging over 27 points per game. I would say whatever they next time they got a break, they better send him back to Maine and have him shoot with his dad, because that's been the best thing that's happened for this Duke team, along with maybe him turning 18, and he's gone to another level since then.
I think Maine may now be the place where you have basketball academies. You send people for training. I mean, there's something that produced this. Is just it was great. I so enjoyed that performance. So.
Yeah, you can. The only other basketball product I know from Maine is Duncan Robinson, and he's a fantastic shooter as well. So maybe that's your shooting academy. You just go shoot with Cooper Flagg's dad. To your point on Coach Scheyer saying, Malik Brown, he made a comment about Malik Brown on the positive side of things, saying, when you looked at the game with Notre Dame, especially with how they played offensively, he said, quote, that game was calling his name. And it's really unfortunate that Malik only got to play 1 minute in a game against Notre Dame when it was just a perfect game for his talent defensively. And I think he could have made a difference in how Notre Dame got going, especially in the second half of that game. They also asked him about his outburst, and he did not answer that. He said, basically, I have a lot of respect for the officials. Next question. So we didn't get much insight into that, but on Malik Brown's injury, as you said, it does not sound good. He said basically Malik is not a guy who is going to, ask out of a game or complain or really talk much at all. And so for him to ask out of the game and have to come out, I think this could be a couple weeks. And so to your point, thankfully we have Gangba, and he can certainly, he's a very different player, but he can certainly step in and give us, 10 minutes, 15 minutes if need be in a given game. And this should be a good opportunity for him to, get into the flow with Duke. So there's a lot of things, going into this game with Miami. Let's talk about Miami, because I think, this is a team. All right, before I talk about the specific team, I did some previews on different teams throughout college basketball, tried to get into some ACC teams. I had this Miami team going 9-2 in non-conference, 13-7 in conference play, 22-9 overall. Boy, I could not have been farther from being right with how this has turned out for Miami.
And to our fans and to all the other people that we hope will join us, we are the only podcast or YouTube channel that truly wears our losses and our mistakes on our shoulders and is able to say, we got it wrong. And boy, did we, get this Miami team. It was just 2 years ago or 3, the way we figured it out 3 years ago, an Elite 8 team, 2 years ago, a Final Four team, and every reason to think that they, maybe they lost some personnel, maybe they wouldn't go as far, but 2 years in a row, the consistency there, and Jim Larrañaga, fabulous coach. But oh well.
Yeah, oh well. And looking back, I think I was definitely a bit too optimistic, but I still think I would have had them as an above, at least a 500 team in conference and above 500 overall. They did lose a lot of players from last year's team, which did have a 10-game losing streak to end the year. So maybe the writing was a little bit on the wall coming into this year, and they did lose, Norchad Omier, Luka Poplar, Keyshawn George, Bensley Joseph. there were a lot of players that they lost from last year's team. But I felt like with Nigel Pack back, with Jalil Bethia coming in as a top 10 recruit, and as you said, Coach Larinaga, he's had an outstanding track record of success throughout his college career, and especially at Miami. I thought this team could be, back on track this year. And unfortunately, Bethea hasn't been, what you would expect from a top 10 recruit. And Nigel Pack has been injured. He hasn't played in the last 4 conference games for Miami. And as we know, Coach Larinaga resigned, was asked to leave the program, whatever may end up being the truth. 4 games ago, when they were 4-8 and 0-1 in conference, they are now 4-12 and 0-5 in conference play. So, Coach Bill Courtney did have some head coaching experience. He was the head coach at Cornell, I believe, for about 6 seasons. Didn't have a great track record there in terms of wins and losses. This is a tough situation to inherit for Coach Courtney, but they've been trying to get some of the younger guys more playing time. They've been in every game this season, despite their record. Their worst loss of the year was 15 points to Florida State. So I expect it to be somewhat competitive, but I just think this is a game that, Duke will not lose.
It's hard to imagine that Duke's going to lose this game. They only lost to, I think it was Tennessee by 13 or 12. And
Yep.
so that was a sign right there that, it's one of the best teams in the country. And you thought maybe they did have something going and your prediction would be right early on. But unfortunately, with the way things have turned for Miami, plus Jim Larinaga's, I'm going to go with the benefit of the doubt. He said that it was the game, it was the portal, it was NIL, it was a variety of things. So I'm going to let Jim Larinaga, who has always seemed to be one of coaching's good guys, and I'm going to let it go that he said, I just can't do it.
Yeah, I've as you know, I've always loved Coach Larinaga, and I think he's done a fantastic job at Miami. And it's unfortunate the way it ended for Coach Larinaga, but that's most of the time. If you're a basketball coach, it doesn't end the way Coach K does, right? Like where you get to call your shot and say, "All right, I'm going to retire." And even for Coach K, I think he would have drawn up a better ending than the way it ended, right? So most of the time, it doesn't go out the way you'd hope. Looking at the rest of this Miami team, their best player right now is certainly Matthew Cleveland, who's been playing really well in conference play. He's a 6'7", wing forward, averaging 18 points and 4 rebounds. Pretty efficient from the floor as well. He's been starting. Jalil Bethia has also been starting, playing a little bit better in conference play, but kind of really inconsistent, like 15 points, then 3 points, then 17, then 3 again. So he just hasn't found a consistent offensive game. Lynn Kidd played at Virginia Tech last year. He is an offensive big, not a great defensive big, but can pass as well, about 6'10". Brandon Johnson is the 4th guy who's consistently started in conference play. He's more of a defensive player than anything else. They did start Divine Ugochukwu, who is another freshman, was not ranked in the top 100. He got hurt in the Florida State game. Not sure if he'll be back for this one. Paul Jobay is back from last year. He's been playing much better in conference play off the bench. And they've got Austin Swartz, who is a top 50 recruit, who's been playing more in conference play, 6'4" guard. AJ Staten McCray is another guard, wing, 6'5". They've got a lot of guys in that 6'3" to 6'5" range. No one really spectacular. Kyrie Hui is a forward, 6'9" forward from Idaho State. who averaged 11 points, 6 rebounds, and a block, who has not played at all this year. So that's another guy that Miami was certainly expecting to have part of the program that they have not had. Interesting team notes, though. This is what I mean by they may not be quite as bad as their record indicates. What I was alluding to earlier, they've been in every game. So if you look at KenPom, they're despite being 4-12, their net rating is 138th in the country. The next lowest, right? The next team with 4 losses, right? So, keep looking for that next team. 4 losses or 4 wins. Sorry, 4 wins, right? Is 261st Fresno State. There's a massive gap between them and the next team with only 4 wins. And that is because they, despite how bad this season has gone, they have a top 50 offense. They're 48th right now on KenPom in offensive efficiency. Now, the reason why they're 4-12, though, is because their defense isn't any good. They're 308th. And so that's why they've been in games, but they can't win them. Their offense can keep them in the games, but they've had a tough time winning them. And even that, I think, is going to be really tough today. Or not today, sorry, Tuesday. Jumping a little bit ahead. And the reason why I say that is because the strength of this Miami offense has been their ability to score inside. And so their top 50 offense, they're 27th in the country in 2-point percentage. So they do a really good job of scoring within the 3-point line. Now, that sounds great, but as we all know, it's almost impossible to score against Duke this season in the paint. It's just, especially when Malawach is on the court, just good luck. So you turn to their 3-point shooting, which is not very good. They shoot less than 32% from 3, which is almost 300th in the country. I just think the numbers and the eye tests say this is going to be a big uphill climb for the Miami Hurricanes unless, and this seems to always happen against Duke, you have some guys who have out-of-body experiences, their best games of the year. And, we just kind of saw it with Notre Dame shooting 60% from 3. So, nothing's impossible in games against Duke.
So let's look at the Duke side of the equation. If Malik Brown is out, then that does chisel away a little bit at that defensive prowess that the team has shown and witnessed a little bit. It didn't have anything to do with shooting 60% from 3-point range, but Malik Brown in the middle is certainly an important part of the Duke defense. So that may give them a little bit more ability. Mal, as good as he is, just can't be everywhere. And it was just, although they didn't play Malik Brown and Mal together, which is something at least I always wanted to see what would happen if you could put him in the middle and then have Mal lower down. But so that is, the defense might not be as sharp, but there's no question that Coach Scheyer is going to ask them to tighten up the vice and to bring on their defense against a team that does have this quirky kind of offensive ability to score points. And so let's see what happens with that. And then I'd love to see the distribution. It's hard to imagine Coop going for another 42-point game. I see Coop is doing one of his games where he does a little bit of everything. Under 20 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 or 3 blocks, and potentially 1 or 2 steals. That he's going to get across the board kind of game, because I think it's part of his natural personality that, all right, I want to get the rest of my guys involved. And this is the perfect game for him to do it. And that's why I said earlier, Foster and Evans. I really want to see both of them to have a game, or at least one of them.
I agree. One stat when we were talking about Cooper, I forgot to mention earlier was I went back and counted. You know, we know he scored 42 points, but how many points were the assists worth against Notre Dame? So those he had 7 assists. They accounted for 14 points. So Cooper Flag accounted for 56 of the 86 Duke points against Notre Dame. To your point, though, I completely agree. I think, the one thing about Cooper Flag, Coach Shire said in an earlier press conference, he said he thinks he'll have a 30-point game. Check. And he said he thinks he will have a triple-double. Haven't seen that yet, but I think it's probably coming. And to your point, with his ability to pass the ball and rebound, I think this makes a lot of sense for it to be one of those kind of games for Cooper Flag, especially getting more involved with more steals and blocks in this game against Miami, because I think there will be more opportunities for those than there were against Notre Dame. With that being said, on the Duke side of things, similar to you, Evans and Foster, I think they've got to get going. I think this is a good game for them to get going. And then also, Con Knipple. I think, even just looking back at the Notre Dame game, he hit some threes early that were like tough shots. And then I felt like he kind of kept taking tough shots. And then I didn't think he showed good composure in those last 5 minutes against Notre Dame. So I want to see him kind of settle into a rhythm, play with more composure that we're used to seeing from Con Knipple, and just have a better overall performance against Miami.
Certainly agree. Jack, can I take it back to it? Is there more you want to add on this game? But I do want to go back to what was the best record.
One quick thing, then you can go.
Go ahead.
After the game with Notre Dame, because they shot 61% from three, Duke did slide. So they are now second in the country in defense. They still have – there's a clear top three in net rating with Auburn, Duke, and kind of strangely, at least to me, Houston is right in that group with Auburn and Duke in terms of the top three teams with net rating. Duke's offense, though, has been climbing, and they are now seventh in offense. And I think they're the only team. I don't want to say that, but they are one of the few teams, I could be wrong, that's top 10 in offense and defense. And while you are going through the ACC history, I'm going to go confirm that. So go ahead.
All right. So, thanks to our audience member, that we have. I started really. Freeman. Yep. Larry, we appreciate the nudge in this direction. So, arguably, the best ACC team of all time is not Duke and is not UNC. And this is really, Michael Jordan, all the players and everything. And I'm going to say, I tend to agree with this, that the argument can be made. It was the 1974 NC State team with one of the most majestic, fabulous players, David Thompson. David Thompson's college career was just superb. And he was the player of the year, and why it's arguably the best team in the history of the ACC. They went 30-1. They won the ACC tournament. They were 12-0 in ACC play. So at the time, 12 ACC games, they ran the table. So 12-0. They go on to win the national championship by beating UCLA, who had just finished winning 7 national titles in a row. And so there is a really, really good argument that they deserve it. And by the way, the year before, 1973, with David Thompson, they were 12-0, but didn't win the national championship that year. So teams have won the ACC regular season undefeated. 1992 Duke team, probably their best with Leitner, Hurley, Grant Hill, was only 14-2 in the ACC. And then we all remember, I mean, this is how long I got to go back for this one, the North Carolina team of 1957, which was 14-0.
You might remember.
I was only one. I was only 1 year old. So
At
even
least you were born.
uh, with Lenny Rosenbluth leading the team and the National Player of the Year. They were 14-0.
You don't remember watching that North Carolina team with, a pacifier in your mouth? Black and white television?
It's possible. Now, 1999, let's bring it back so that our listeners could say, I remember the Elton Brand, Trey Langdon, Chris Carrawell team, which was just great. 16-0 in ACC play.
Was Will Avery on that team as well?
Didn't spot him. Did not spot him in the quick lineup, but it was a great, great, great team. The 2002 Maryland team, Juan Dixon, one of the just great college basketball players. They were 15-1. So, I'm going to still, Larry, I promise, I'm going to still dig into this to see as the, conference expanded. And they played at least 18 or 20. Has there been a team that has run the table? And so far, not since these teams and these examples, but the most recent being Duke going 16-0. And so you could run the table. And I can see Jon Scheyer challenging this team to say, how far can they go? It's a great challenge to him. So we're going to, we're 6 wins, good chance for the 7th win. And, I think it's a great way to psych the players up because it's also one game at a time, which has always been Scheyer's way of playing. It's this game. What are we going to do to win this game? And he learned that from Coach K, who said, no matter what, you play only this game. You do not look ahead to, I don't know, UNC, Clemson, whatever. It's this game against Miami, Jack.
I was just going to add that I don't think that's even from Coach K. I think that's just general coach speak. We're only looking at this game. Classic Bill Belichick. If they were ever to ask him, we're just looking at the next game. That's it. Or he wouldn't even say that. Just today, right? Did go back. Good. I caught myself there, so I went back and checked. Iowa State is actually in the top 10 in offense and defense this year. They are 6th in offense, strangely 10th in defense for them, which is weird. And Houston is close. They're 13th in offense, 1st in defense. So, there are some other teams that are close. All right, and Iowa State is in, but Duke is certainly the best in terms of balance between the offense and the defense this year. It should be a fun game with Miami. I think it will be, up and down. But I do think there's a world where Duke's interior defense creates too much of an issue for Miami, forcing them to shoot more threes. And if Nigel Pack is not playing, which I haven't seen any indication one way or the other if he will be back or if he won't be, I just think they don't have the shooting to make this a competitive game. And I would think, especially if Pack is not back for this game against Duke, they will suffer their worst defeat of the season against the Dukies.
And as we like to challenge each other and our listeners, by what's the score and by how many points?
80-52.
So the defense is locked down solid again, and they'll put up 80. I'm going to come in with an 18-point victory, just shy of the magic 20. and I'm going to have that lower. So I'm going to have Duke on the road. So 72-54.
Duke's at home. Do you want to make a correction?
How many times do they play in Cameron? Do they always play?
It's it's 3 in a row. It was a little bit weird when I looked at the schedule. I agree, but 3 in a row.
All right.
And then
Okay.
do
All
have.
right. All right.
Yeah.
My bad. My bad. All right. So we're at home. Yeah, I'll go back up to 24-point win at home. And but sluggish offense, great defense, 24-point win, 74-50.
Okay. Ballpark. We're close. So let us know what you guys think in the comments below. What do you think is going? What are some keys for this game against Miami? We'll be back for the post game, so make sure you subscribe so you can be in tune for all the things that we do on Talking Ball. Please like this video; helps us grow. Share it with your friends, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.